Hi folks, well it's been 5 days since the election, and you know what? The world has not ended yet. You know, there's been a lot of talk this week. Half the nation's upset, the other half is happy, and that's what happens. But what is so interesting to me is the fact that we kind of got into a cycle where because we had to make a decision, we had to judge someone on perhaps their character, whether or not they were worthy to fill the highest office in the land. It's made us very, very critical, not just of politicians, but I believe it's made us critical of others. Hi, I'm Jeff Johnson, and this is The Bottom Line. This is The Bottom Line for November 13th, 2016, the Pharisee and the tax collector. You know, in Luke chapter 18, we see a great scene. It's not hard to understand. If you read it on your own, you would grab it. And Jesus has the context here, and he looks out and his crowd, and he goes, "Okay, I got a lot of folks here that do everything right, but they don't do it with the right heart." So he says this. He talks about the Pharisee who stands in the temple courts and says, "God, I thank you that I am not like other people, robbers and evildoers, politicians," threw that in, adulterers, or even like this tax collector. The guy is standing right next to him, and the Pharisee who's praying throws him under the bus. And then he continues on and says, "I fast twice a week and I give a tenth of all I get." You know, the Pharisee was very, very proud of his accomplishments, his spiritual accomplishments. But what he didn't understand or didn't have going on is that which the tax collector was about to demonstrate. In verse 13, the tax collector says he stood at a distance. He would not even look up to heaven. He would put his hands to his chest and he beat his breast and said, "God, have mercy on me, a sinner." The Greek says, "God, have mercy on me, the sinner." See, folks, the fact of the matter is that the tax collector, despite being one of the most, he would not be popular in his society. Jews thought they were a sellout to the Romans and everything else, and many tax collectors were very nefarious in the way they charged interest and treated people and everything else, and they in themselves thought of themselves as a different class. So you had the tax collector who thought of himself as higher and mighty and he could charge people exorbitant amounts of fees, and then you had the Pharisee who thought he was a spiritual elite. And Jesus is saying only one of them is getting it right here, the one that comes humbly. Folks, the idea of humility is very much lost in our society anymore. But Scripture says that if we are humble, then God will lift us up. We're very busy promoting ourselves. We take pictures of ourselves doing extraordinary things, and we look to see how many likes we get, and so on and so forth. But I'm telling you today that humility would go a long way. And certainly humility will go a long way in regards to folks that are trying to find their way to Christ. Sometimes we put exorbitant conditions on them, and we try to apply them to the rules that were set for us when we were coming to Christ. But I want to remind you that many people are coming to Christ from a much farther distance away. They didn't grow up in the church. They don't even have an understanding of who Jesus is. I met someone recently that said, "I've never heard about Jesus before." Jesus, who is that? What I'm getting at, folks, very simply is that we have to understand that there is more to coming to church and just going through the mechanics of faith. We need to embrace our faith. We need to find joy in our service. And we need to be humble and be like that tax collector that said, "God, I'm a chief of sinners. I need you in my life." Paul showed us this progression in regards to his walk with the Lord. He first starts talking in Galatians that he is an apostle. And then he, in Corinthians, goes to being the least of the apostles. Then the Ephesians, he gets to being the least of sinners. And then his final words out of Timothy, he says that he is the worst of all. And folks, it wasn't that he was just trying to throw himself under the bus, but in comparison to Christ, the closer he got to Christ, he realized that God's grace was so sufficient that he would allow someone like him to be in his presence. And folks, as we understand this parable today, and as we move forward as a country, then I would just encourage you to be humble before the Lord, and He will lift you up. If you don't know how to move forward in this election, then I would encourage you to pray. Perhaps God is bringing someone into your life to mentor, and that would be that'd be an opportunity to not teach them your rules, but together finding God's grace for your life today to move forward. Folks, that's the bottom line for this week. Be humble. Don't be like that Pharisee, and understand the grace that was coming to the tax collector. If you'll do that, He will bring you up. Thanks for tuning in today. Do me a favor, share this with others. God bless you. Have a great week.